Some people spend their whole lives building beautiful houses and still go home to a place that does not feel like home. Amelia Hartwell heard that sentence in her own mind while standing beneath a white event tent in downtown Columbus, Ohio, surrounded by investors, photographers, charity donors, and carefully arranged tables of flowers that cost more than most families spent on groceries in a month. She was 34, a white American chief executive officer with polished chestnut hair, a tailored cream suit, and the kind of calm smile people praised in magazines without knowing how much discipline it required. Hartwell Home Living had sponsored the community family fair to celebrate affordable housing projects, and everywhere Amelia turned, cameras wanted her face beside smiling parents, bright balloons, and children holding paper keys to model houses. She knew how to speak about warmth. She knew how to sell comfort. She knew how to stand inside a crowd and feel completely alone. Then she saw Caleb Morgan. He was not near the cameras. He was sitting on a plaid picnic blanket at the edge of the grass, away from the donors and the silver trays, wearing a faded denim jacket over a work shirt, jeans, and boots still dusted from a job site. He was 39, broad-shouldered, strong in the quiet way of men who fix what breaks before anyone notices. On his right forearm, when his sleeve shifted, a small tattoo showed beneath the sunlight. "Stay gentle," with the name Ellie below it. His daughter sat cross-legged across from him, 8 years old, bright-eyed, serious as a judge, holding a paper crown covered in stickers. "Your Majesty must wear it," she commanded. Caleb put a hand over his heart. "I am only a humble pancake knight." "Then kneel, pancake knight." He bowed his head, and Ellie placed the crooked crown on him with royal importance. A smear of chocolate sauce marked her cheek. Caleb noticed it, wet a napkin with lemonade, and gently wiped it away while she protested that queens were allowed to have battle paint. He laughed, and it was not polished, not strategic, not useful to any brand campaign. It was real. Amelia could not stop watching. She had stood in mansions where nobody laughed like that. She had eaten dinner beneath chandeliers where forks touched plates louder than love touched people. She had spent her life around perfect rooms and never once felt what Caleb and Ellie seemed to carry on that cheap blanket. A small, imperfect, living home. Before she could talk herself out of it, Amelia walked across the grass. Caleb looked up, startled, then began to rise, embarrassed by the paper crown. "Please do not," she said softly. "It suits you." Ellie giggled. Caleb smiled with the cautious politeness of a working man speaking to a woman whose name was on the banners. Amelia looked at the blanket, the plastic lemonade cups, the pancake container, the child leaning against her father as if the world made sense there, and the truth slipped out before pride could stop it. "I wish I had a happy family like yours." Caleb gave a small laugh, thinking she was making conversation, maybe even teasing him gently. He lifted the paper crown from his head and said, "Well, my kid needs a mom." A few nearby guests chuckled. Caleb's smile faded the second he saw Amelia's face. She did not laugh. Her eyes had gone still, and something old and lonely moved behind them. Then Ellie looked up at Amelia with chocolate on one cheek and wisdom far too large for her years. "Only if she knows how to stay," the little girl said. The laughter died so quickly that even the wind seemed to pause. Amelia stood there beneath the white tent, surrounded by everything money could arrange, and for the first time all afternoon, nobody knew what to say. Caleb Morgan apologized before the silence had fully settled, because a good father learns to repair what his words might have cracked. "Miss Hartwell, I am sorry," he said, lowering the paper crown into his lap. "That came out wrong." Amelia looked from him to Ellie, then back to the little picnic blanket, as if the whole world had narrowed to one small square of grass. "No," she said quietly. It came out honest. Caleb did not know what to do with that. He was used to fixing loose porch rails, leaking pipes, broken cabinet doors, old furnaces that groaned through Ohio winters. He knew the weight of a toolbox in his hand and the language of houses that had been loved too hard and repaired too late. But he did not know how to stand in front of a wealthy chief executive officer whose eyes looked suddenly like a window with the lights off inside. So he did what he always did when life became too tender. He reached for Ellie's napkin, folded it twice, and gave his daughter a careful look. "Your queenly battle paint has returned." Ellie wiped her cheek, still studying Amelia. "Do you have kids?" she asked. Caleb winced softly. "Ellie." Amelia gave the smallest smile. It is all right. No, I do not. Do you have a dog? No, a cat. No. Ellie frowned with deep concern. Then who waits for you when you come home? The question landed more gently than cruelty ever could, and somehow that made it harder to bear. Amelia opened her mouth, but there was no boardroom answer for a child asking about loneliness. Caleb saw it and stepped in, not to save her, but to spare her. Ellie, some people have very important jobs. Ellie turned to him. Important jobs should still have snacks and somebody waiting. Caleb wanted to laugh, but the ache beneath her words stopped him. Their own house was small, a weathered two-bedroom place outside Columbus with a porch that leaned slightly to the left and a kitchen window that rattled when the wind came across the fields. At their table sat 3 chairs, one for Caleb, one for Ellie, one that had remained empty since Rachel, his wife, passed away 4 years earlier. Caleb had once tried to move it to the corner, thinking it might help Ellie. She had dragged it back with all the strength her small arms could gather and said, "That is the waiting chair." He had not touched it again. Every morning, Caleb woke before 6, packed Ellie's lunch, made coffee strong enough to forgive him, and tried to braid her hair with hands better suited for lumber than ribbons. Some days the braid leaned sideways. Some days breakfast burned. Some days he stood in the hallway after Ellie left for school and listened to the house breathe around that empty chair. But he kept going because love is often ordinary before it becomes heroic. It is socks folded at midnight. It is pancakes shaped badly but served with a smile. It is a father pretending he is not lonely because his child already has one missing person to carry. Amelia watched Caleb lift Ellie's paper crown and place it back on his own head, making the child laugh again. That laugh softened the air around them. The donors kept talking. The cameras kept flashing. The event moved on. But Amelia stayed near the blanket, held there by something she could not name. Caleb looked up at her with a gentleness that did not ask for anything. "For what it is worth," he said, "our family is happy, but it is not perfect." Ellie leaned against him and added, "Perfect is boring. Pancakes with burnt edges are better." Amelia laughed then, truly laughed, and the sound surprised even her. It was small, unguarded, and gone almost as soon as it arrived. But Caleb heard it. Ellie heard it. And somewhere between the paper crown, the lemonade cups, and the waiting chair neither woman nor child had fully explained yet, Amelia Hartwell felt the first warm pull of a home that was not hers, but somehow had made room for her shadow. That night, Amelia Hartwell returned to her penthouse overlooking downtown Columbus, and the silence greeted her before the lights did. The elevator opened into a private foyer of pale stone, brushed brass, and fresh flowers arranged by someone she paid but rarely met. Her home was the kind of place magazines loved. Floor-to-ceiling windows, cream furniture nobody spilled on, a dining table long enough for 10 people, and a kitchen so spotless it looked as if hunger had never been invited inside. Amelia set her purse on the entry table and stood still. At the family fair, she had been surrounded by noise, children laughing, paper plates bending under pancakes, volunteers calling raffle numbers, Caleb pretending to bow before his daughter like a knight in a crooked crown. Here, the thermostat hummed. The refrigerator whispered. Her heels clicked once, then stopped, because there was no one to hear her arrive. She opened the refrigerator and found sparkling water, salad greens, 2 glass containers from a meal service, and a lemon wrapped in plastic. No sticky syrup bottle. No half-finished lemonade. No small handprints on the counter. No chair pulled out by someone who forgot to push it back in. She closed the door gently, as if loudness might embarrass the room. Hartwell Home Living had made Amelia famous for selling warmth to America. Her face had appeared beside slogans about family rooms, forever homes, and tables where memories begin. She knew which fabrics made a room feel softer. She knew which wall colors made buyers imagine Sunday mornings. She could stand before investors and explain why people did not just buy furniture, they bought belonging. But belonging had always looked different from the inside. Amelia grew up in a house with 8 bedrooms and no place to cry. Her father measured success in acquisitions. Her mother measured dignity in silence. Birthdays were catered. Holidays were photographed. Apologies were replaced with gifts. When Amelia was 12, she once waited at the top of the stairs in a velvet dress while her parents argued behind a closed library door, and she remembered thinking that rich houses could echo louder than empty ones. By college, she had learned not to need waiting. By 34, she had turned that lesson into a career. Yet Caleb's little girl had asked the one question no board member ever dared to ask. Who waits for you when you come home? Amelia walked to the dining room and touched the back of one chair. The table was perfect, polished, untouched. She pictured Caleb's smaller table, 3 chairs, one empty, one waiting. She pictured Ellie leaning against him with chocolate on her cheek, telling a grown woman that staying mattered. Her phone buzzed. Brett Langford's name appeared on the screen. Chief financial officer, family friend, and the man her mother still described as sensible. Amelia let it ring once, then answered. You were distracted today, Brett said, without greeting. Good evening to you too. I am serious. The donors noticed. That maintenance contractor and his child made you look sentimental. Amelia looked around her perfect room and felt a strange, quiet anger rise. Maybe sentiment is not the worst thing a person can look. Brett sighed. You are the face of a national brand. Be careful what kind of family story people attach to you. Amelia ended the call without answering. Outside, the city lights shivered against the glass. Inside, the penthouse remained flawless and cold. She walked to the kitchen, took down a mixing bowl she had never used, and searched her phone for pancake recipes. It was foolish. It was late. It was not something a serious chief executive officer needed to do. But as she read the first instruction, measure 1 cup of flour, Amelia smiled faintly. For the first time in years, she was not thinking about the next campaign, the next acquisition, or the next room arranged to look like love. She was thinking about a crooked paper crown, a father's gentle hands, and a waiting chair in a small house that somehow felt more real than everything she owned. The invitation arrived 3 days later in an envelope decorated with purple marker stars and one brave pancake, drawn so round it looked like a moon. Amelia found it on her desk between a quarterly sales report and a legal folder from Brett Langford, and for a moment the whole executive floor seemed to lose its sound. The front of the card said Miss Amelia in careful child handwriting, and inside, Ellie had written that pancake class would begin Saturday at 10 in the morning, that students should wear clothes that could get flour on them, and that smiling was not required but usually happened by accident. Amelia read it twice. Then she read it again, slower, because no invitation in her life had ever asked so little and offered so much. Across the hall, executives moved behind glass walls, discussing market share and product launches. Her assistant asked if she should send flowers to the Morgan home as a polite reply. Amelia looked down at the crooked pancake drawing and shook her head. No, she said. I think this one requires showing up. Caleb almost said no when Amelia called that evening. He stood in his small kitchen with the phone against his ear, one hand resting on the back of the empty chair. Rain tapped the window over the sink. Ellie sat at the table pretending not to listen while arranging measuring spoons like surgical tools. Miss Hartwell, you do not have to do this, Caleb said. Ellie gets excited, but she understands grown-ups are busy. Amelia's voice came through softer than he expected. Is that your way of protecting me from pancakes or protecting your daughter from disappointment? Caleb looked at Ellie, who suddenly found the ceiling very interesting. Both, maybe. There was a pause. Not awkward. Honest. Then I will be there at 10, Amelia said. And Caleb, please call me Amelia. On Saturday morning, she arrived without a driver, without an assistant, without a camera, wearing jeans, a simple blue sweater, and a raincoat with one sleeve slightly damp from carrying grocery bags. Caleb opened the door and looked so surprised that Ellie burst past him. You came. Amelia smiled at her. You said class starts at 10. I am 3 minutes early. Ellie nodded with approval. That is very mom behavior. Caleb coughed once into his fist. Ellie. Amelia's face changed, but she did not run from the word. She stepped inside carefully, as if entering a place where something fragile was allowed to live. The house smelled of coffee, laundry soap, and old wood warmed by the furnace. The kitchen was small, the cabinets chipped at the corners, the chairs mismatched around the table. Yet the room held a kind of peace Amelia had never been able to buy. Ellie tied an apron around Amelia's waist and handed her a whisk with great seriousness. First rule, do not be fancy. Amelia nodded. That may be difficult. Caleb leaned against the counter, arms folded, a smile tugging at his mouth. Around here, mistakes are just breakfast with better stories. 10 minutes later, Amelia spilled flour across the counter, cracked an egg too hard, and stirred the batter with the focus of a woman negotiating a merger. Ellie laughed so hard she had to sit down. Caleb simply handed Amelia a towel. No judgment, no performance, no one turning her mistake into a lesson about weakness. Just a towel, a warm kitchen, and a little girl saying, "See, you are learning how to stay." Amelia looked at Caleb then. He looked away first, not because he did not feel the moment, but because he did. Outside, the rain softened the street. Inside, the first pancake came out uneven, pale in the center, burned at one edge, and Ellie declared it perfect because it looked like Ohio. Amelia laughed again, fuller this time. Caleb placed 3 plates on the table, then hesitated when he reached the waiting chair. Ellie noticed. So did Amelia. No one said the word mother. No one tried to fill the past with something new. But when Amelia sat down at that table, carefully, humbly, grateful for the burnt-edged pancake in front of her, Caleb felt the house grow quiet in a different way, not empty this time, but listening. By Monday morning, Amelia Hartwell's visit to the Morgan house had already become something people in her world wanted to explain away. Not because anything improper had happened, and not because anyone had been harmed, but because quiet joy has a way of frightening people who profit from loneliness. Brett Langford was waiting outside Amelia's office before her first meeting, dressed in a charcoal suit, holding a tablet, and wearing the patient expression of a man who believed concern gave him ownership. "We need to talk," he said. Amelia set her purse on the desk and removed her coat slowly. "That is usually what people say when they have already decided what I should think." Brett did not smile. "You went to his house." She looked at him across the polished office, where every chair matched, every shelf was arranged, and nothing smelled like pancakes or rain. "I was invited. By an 8-year-old. "Yes," Amelia said. "And she was more gracious than most board members I know." Brett's jaw tightened. He placed the tablet on her desk. The screen showed a blurry photograph taken from across Caleb Street. Amelia stepping off the porch in jeans and a blue sweater, Caleb standing in the doorway, Ellie waving from behind him. It looked innocent because it was innocent, but Brett had cropped it in a way that made privacy feel like evidence. "Do you understand how easily this becomes a story?" he asked. "Chief executive officer plays house with single dad from a company project. Investors will ask questions. The board will ask questions. Your mother will ask questions." Amelia's face went still at the last sentence. Brett noticed. Men like Brett always noticed the bruise before they pressed it. "Caleb Morgan may seem humble," he continued, "but men with nothing often know exactly how to reach women with everything." Amelia stepped closer to the desk, her voice quiet. "Do not talk about him like that. I am trying to protect you." "No," she said. "You are trying to keep me lonely because lonely people are easier to manage." For the first time, Brett's polished calm cracked. Only slightly. Only enough for the truth to show through. "You are being naive." The office door had not fully closed behind him when Caleb arrived on the executive floor to repair a loose handrail near the design showroom. He had not meant to hear anything. He was carrying a tool bag, a folded work order, and the kind of dignity that made him look away from conversations not meant for him. But he heard his name. He heard single dad. He heard men with nothing. And he stopped just long enough for the words to do what words can do when they are sharpened by class and fear. Amelia turned and saw him through the glass wall. Caleb gave a small nod, not accusing, not wounded in any way he would admit. "I am here for the handrail," he said when she opened the door. "Maintenance request." Brett looked him over from boots to jacket, then smiled with expensive cruelty. "Of course you are." Amelia's eyes flashed. Caleb only adjusted the strap of his tool bag. A loose rail does not care who fixes it. He walked to the showroom and knelt beside the staircase, working in silence while Amelia stood a few feet away, torn between anger and embarrassment. When Brett left, the air changed, but the damage stayed. Amelia approached slowly. "Caleb, I am sorry you heard that." He tightened a screw, then tested the rail with one steady hand. "I have heard worse. That does not make it right." He looked up at her, and his expression was gentle enough to hurt. "No, it does not." The hallway grew quiet around them. Downstairs, customers moved through staged living rooms filled with perfect couches and artificial fireplaces. Caleb stood, wiped his hands on a clean rag, and said the thing he had been carrying since Saturday morning. "If peace means stepping back, I can do that." Amelia's breath caught. Is that what you want? He looked toward the showroom window, where a dining table had been arranged with four-perfect plates and no real meal. What I want stopped being the first question a long time ago. His voice stayed calm, but the calm was not empty. It was fatherhood, grief, and respect holding the line together. Ellie likes you. That means I have to be careful. And if you have to choose between peace and me, I hope you choose peace. Amelia said nothing. Caleb lifted his tool bag and walked toward the elevator, leaving behind a repaired handrail, a woman who did not know how to ask him to stay, and a staged room that suddenly looked more fake than ever. Ellie Morgan noticed Amelia's absence before Caleb found the courage to explain it. Children do not need calendars to measure distance. They hear it in the way a phone does not ring, in the way a father washes the same plate twice, in the way a waiting chair goes back to being only a chair. For 3 evenings after the handrail repair, Caleb came home, made dinner, checked homework, and answered Ellie's questions with careful gentleness. Is Miss Amelia busy? Very busy. Did we do something wrong? No, bud. Did I say too much about staying? Caleb paused over the sink, one hand in warm dishwater, the other gripping a chipped plate. You told the truth. Ellie looked toward the empty chair at the table. Then why does truth make people leave? Caleb did not answer right away. Outside, the Ohio sky had turned lavender over the small backyard, and the porch light flickered like it was trying to decide whether to stay on. Sometimes people leave because they are scared, he said finally. Sometimes they think leaving will hurt less than staying. Ellie frowned, not satisfied with grown-up sadness pretending to be wisdom. Later that night, after Caleb checked the locks and folded laundry on the couch, Ellie sat at her desk with a purple marker and a sheet of notebook paper. Her handwriting tilted downhill, but her heart stayed steady. She wrote, Miss Amelia, Daddy says people leave when they are scared, but families learn to come back. You do not have to be perfect at pancakes. You do not have to know all the mom things. You just have to tell the truth and not disappear when people laugh. The waiting chair is still here. She added a drawing of 3 chairs around a table. One chair had a crown on it. One had work boots under it. One had a bowl of pancake batter beside it. The next morning, she slipped the letter into an envelope and asked Caleb to deliver it. He stood at the kitchen counter, reading the outside of the envelope, and felt that familiar ache of wanting to protect his daughter from hope. Ellie, sweetheart, we cannot make people choose us. I am not making her, Ellie said. I am reminding her. Caleb closed his eyes for a second, because there are moments when children sound like Grace with sneakers on. By noon, the envelope sat on Amelia's desk at Hartwell Home Living, placed there by Caleb without a word after he finished a repair request downstairs. Amelia found it 5 minutes before a board meeting. Brett was already waiting in the conference room with a prepared media strategy, polished talking points, and the quiet confidence of a man who believed fear could be scheduled. Amelia opened the envelope in the elevator. The doors closed. The building rose. Her reflection stared back from the mirrored wall, cream blouse, navy blazer, perfect hair, expensive watch, all the armor of a woman who had spent years looking unshakable. Then she read Ellie's words. By the time the elevator passed the 10th floor, her eyes had blurred. By the 20th, she was holding the paper with both hands. By the 30th, she understood that the question had never been whether Caleb and Ellie needed her. The question was whether she had the courage to stop running from the place in herself that needed them too. The elevator opened to the executive floor, where board members waited behind glass, and Brett stood ready to explain her life to her. Amelia folded the letter carefully, placed it inside her blazer pocket, and stepped forward with a calm that no longer felt like armor. It felt like a decision. By sunset, Brett Langford had already turned a private doorway into a public story. The photograph appeared first on a business gossip account, then on local news pages, then everywhere strangers go when they want to feel righteous without knowing the whole truth. The image showed Amelia stepping off Caleb's porch in jeans and a blue sweater, Caleb standing in the doorway behind her, Ellie waving from the hall. There was no scandal in the moment itself, only a child saying goodbye and a woman leaving a home where she had been treated kindly. But a cruel caption can make innocence look suspicious if enough people are willing to believe it. By morning, reporters were outside Hartwell Home Living, asking whether Amelia had blurred professional boundaries with a single father connected to a community housing project. By noon, the board wanted a statement. By 2 o'clock, Brett had placed a printed speech in front of her and said, "Read this at the gala tonight. Distance yourself," and the story ends. Amelia looked at the pages. Every sentence was clean, polished, and cowardly. She would express regret for any misunderstanding. She would reaffirm her commitment to corporate integrity. She would clarify that her relationship with Caleb Morgan and his daughter was limited to charitable outreach. She would make the world comfortable by making two good people sound like a mistake. Across town, Caleb was repairing a porch step at a Hartwell community site when the first reporter found him. The woman held out a microphone while two cameras pointed at his face. "Mr. Morgan, did you use your daughter to get close to Amelia Hartwell?" Caleb stood slowly, tool belt at his waist, dust on his jeans, sunlight catching the tattoo on his forearm. "Stay gentle." He looked tired, but not ashamed. "No, ma'am." "Are you pursuing a relationship for financial benefit?" "No." "Then what were you doing with her at your house?" Caleb glanced toward the half-repaired porch, then toward a row of small homes being prepared for families who needed a fair start. He could have walked away. He could have defended himself with anger. But dignity does not need volume when truth is standing beside it. "A woman is not a ladder," he said quietly. "A child is not a headline. And a home is not something you fake for cameras." The reporter lowered the microphone just slightly. The workers nearby stopped pretending not to listen. Caleb picked up his hammer, then set it down again, because there was one more thing his daughter deserved to hear someday. "Miss Hartwell came to our house because my little girl invited her to learn pancakes. That is all. She was kind. We were kind back. If that embarrasses people, maybe they should ask why kindness looks so strange to them." The clip spread faster than Brett expected. Not with laughter this time. With silence first. Then with comments from single parents, teachers, nurses, carpenters, widowers, and people who understood that a small kitchen can be more honest than a grand ballroom. Amelia watched the clip in her office, Ellie's letter folded in her pocket and Brett's speech lying on the desk like a cold stone. Brett stood near the window, jaw tight. "He is making this worse." Amelia turned off the screen and looked at him. "No, Brett. He is making it clear." That evening, the gala lights glowed over downtown Columbus. Investors filled the ballroom. Cameras waited. Caleb arrived only to take Ellie home after she insisted on giving Amelia one more drawing. But when he saw the press near the entrance, he paused. Ellie squeezed his hand. "Daddy, family's come back." He looked across the room and saw Amelia standing near the stage, dressed in ivory, surrounded by people asking her to choose safety over truth. She looked back at him, and for the first time, she did not look like a lonely woman trapped inside a perfect life. She looked like someone ready to stay. The ballroom of Hartwell Home Living's anniversary gala looked like every beautiful room Amelia had ever been told to admire. Crystal lights floated above white tablecloths, gold-rimmed plates, tall flowers, and investors dressed in careful confidence. Along the walls, photographs showed perfect kitchens, perfect nurseries, perfect family rooms where nobody ever seemed tired, lonely, or afraid. Brett Langford stood near the stage with the prepared statement in his hand, watching Amelia as if she were a contract that only needed one final signature. "Keep it brief," he said. "Regret the misunderstanding. Protect the brand. Walk away clean." Amelia looked at the paper, then across the ballroom to where Caleb stood near the back doors with Ellie beside him. He had not dressed to impress anyone. He wore a clean button-down shirt, dark jeans, and the same quiet dignity that had made a small kitchen feel safer than every mansion she had ever entered. Ellie held a folded drawing against her chest, her face brave but worried. Caleb leaned down and whispered something to her, probably that they should go, probably that Amelia had enough trouble without them adding to it. That was when Amelia understood what leaving really cost. It was not just walking away from two people. It was agreeing with everyone who believed love was useful only when it looked good in public. The host introduced her. Applause rose, smooth and expected. Amelia walked to the microphone with Brett's speech in her hand. Cameras lifted. Board members sat straighter. Brett smiled because he thought obedience had arrived on schedule. Amelia unfolded the paper, looked at the first line, and placed it flat on the podium without reading it. The room shifted. "Tonight, I was asked to protect the image of this company," she began. Her voice was calm, but there was no armor in it now. But an image is not a home. A home is not built by pretending no one needs anyone. A home is where someone stays when leaving would be easier. The ballroom grew still. Brett's smile faded. Amelia reached into her blazer pocket and took out Ellie's letter, folded and softened from being held too many times. A little girl taught me that. She looked toward the back of the room. Ellie's eyes widened. Caleb stopped moving. Amelia continued. For years, I helped sell beautiful houses to people while privately believing I had to earn the right to belong anywhere. Then I sat at a small kitchen table with a father who did not mock my mistakes and a child who believed an empty chair could be patient. That was not a scandal. That was grace. A murmur moved through the crowd, then died when Amelia lifted the second folder from the podium. What was a scandal, she said, was the deliberate leak of a private photograph by someone inside this company, edited and distributed to manipulate the board, the press, and my personal life. She turned toward Brett. Our internal review confirmed the file came from your office. Brett stood too quickly. Amelia, this is not the place. She faced him fully. No, Brett, this is exactly the place. You try to make kindness look shameful because loneliness made me easier to control. No one spoke. The silence was not empty. It was the sound of a room recognizing truth after mistaking polish for character. The board chair rose slowly and asked security to escort Brett to a private conference room pending formal review. There was no shouting, no spectacle, only the quiet end of a man's control. Amelia turned back to the microphone. Hartwell Home Living will launch a community housing program for single parents, not as charity for headlines, but as a promise that homes are measured by safety, dignity, and who is allowed to come back. Her eyes found Caleb again, and Caleb Morgan has agreed, if he chooses, to advise us, because he knows what many of us forgot. A house is made of walls, but a home is made of staying. Caleb lowered his head, overwhelmed, while Ellie slipped her small hand into his. Then Ellie lifted her drawing high enough for Amelia to see 3 chairs around a table. This time, all 3 were full. The applause began softly, then grew, but Amelia barely heard it. She saw Caleb. She saw Ellie. And for the first time in her life, standing in the brightest room money could arrange, she was not performing belonging. She was choosing it. The applause did not solve everything, and that was why it mattered. Real healing rarely arrives with chandeliers shining above it or cameras catching the best angle. It comes later, in quiet rooms, in honest conversations, in the slow proof that a promise can survive ordinary days. Brett Langford was placed under formal review, and Hartwell Home Living released a simple statement acknowledging the leaked photograph, the manipulation behind it, and the company's new commitment to protect the dignity of the families it served. Amelia signed that statement herself. She did not hide behind public relations language. She did not call Caleb a misunderstanding. She called him what he had been from the beginning, a father, a worker, and a man whose home had reminded her what her company was supposed to honor. In the weeks that followed, the community housing program became more than a gala announcement. Amelia moved meetings out of polished conference rooms and into unfinished houses, church basements, school cafeterias, and construction trailers where single parents spoke plainly about rent, repairs, childcare, transportation, and the quiet shame of needing help. Caleb accepted the advisory role only after making 2 things clear. First, Ellie would never be used for publicity. Second, homes should be built around real lives, not photographs for brochures. Amelia agreed before he finished speaking. That was how trust grew between them, not through dramatic declarations, but through kept boundaries. Caleb still worked with his hands. He still fixed porch steps, tightened loose rails, and came home with sawdust on his sleeves. Amelia still ran the company, but her penthouse slowly changed. The perfect dining table collected mail, pancake mix, and 1 purple marker Ellie forgot there after a Saturday visit. The refrigerator held strawberries, lemonade, and a container labeled Ellie's emergency whipped cream. For the first time, Amelia stopped treating quiet as proof of failure. Sometimes quiet meant peace. Sometimes it meant someone was coming back. Caleb was careful. He did not ask Amelia to replace Rachel. He spoke his wife's name with respect, kept her photograph on the hallway shelf, and let grief remain part of the house instead of a room everyone avoided. Amelia never tried to compete with memory. She learned where the mugs were kept. She learned Ellie hated blueberries and pancakes, but loved them on the side. She learned that Caleb whistled when he was nervous, that he checked the porch light twice, and that his gentleness was not softness but discipline. Months later, on a cold Sunday evening in Columbus, snow began falling while Caleb set 3 plates on the kitchen table. Ellie rushed in wearing fuzzy socks, carrying a paper crown repaired with tape. Amelia stood near the doorway, uncertain for one final second, as if the old loneliness still expected someone to take the chair away. Caleb noticed. He pulled out the waiting chair, not with ceremony, not as a proposal, not as a performance, but with steady kindness. "Dinner is getting cold," he said. Amelia smiled, and the fear in her face loosened. She sat down. Ellie climbed into her own chair, looked from her father to Amelia, and placed the paper crown in the center of the table like a family treasure. "I told you it was waiting," she said. Caleb looked at the chair that had once held absence, then at the woman who had chosen to stay without erasing what came before. He reached across the table and rested his hand gently over Amelia's. She did not pull away. Outside, snow softened the old porch, the uneven steps, the little house with its rattling kitchen window. Inside, pancakes were a little too dark at the edges, the lemonade was too sweet, and Ellie talked with her mouth full until Caleb reminded her about manners. It was not perfect. That was the miracle of it. It was real. And in that small kitchen, beneath ordinary light, 3 people who had known different kinds of loneliness finally learned that a home is not the place where nothing has ever been broken. It is the place where someone stays long enough to help you mend.